Footsteps SA Square Dance Crew. We have 11-year-old Sarah, 13-year-old Angeli, 13-year-old Sarah. They've been dancing since they were 2, 4, and 3 respectively, and are together for 2 years, performing to you a Bollywood item. Let's hear it for the Footsteps SA Square.
Ladies and gentlemen, namaste, satsrikal. Thank you for coming out this evening to this fundraising event. For those who have been attending for the past 13 years, I thank you. And for those who are coming for the first time, I welcome you. Through Rivers Kids Foundation, for those who have come for the first time, we take children from Guyana who have life-threatening illnesses which cannot be treated in Guyana, and we take them to India. And the reason we take them to India is because India offers very good health care at a fraction of the cost compared to Canada, USA, or anywhere in Europe. In 2019, because of unforeseen circumstances, the foundation was not intending to do a mission. However, 3 of our children got very ill, and I had to take them to India. So I'll just give you a quick update on the 2019 mission. Last year, April, we took Alvin Sukla. He is a child who's got nephrotic syndrome, and generally children tend to grow out of this condition. As of now, Alvin has not grown out of it. However, since he's gone back to Guyana, it's been a year and has not been hospitalized, so that's a good sign. We're going to take him back again in March of 2020, and hopefully that will be the last visit for him if he stabilizes. And I think most of you know of Veena Maingru. For those of you who are new here, I'll tell you a little bit about this child. she's got some sort of an allergy, which we do not know what it is. She basically rubbed her eyes, both eyes, continuously for 12 years, and literally scarred her cornea and rubbed her cornea off her eyes. So she had corneal transplant done in both her eyes. However, the right eye is, she's showing signs of rejection, and we needed to take her back last year to get the inflammation reduced. And hopefully, when we go back in March, I said hopefully, I'll explain later, we'll be able to do the transplant in that right eye. And Adrian Prasad, you saw him on the news. He is 18-year-old with lots of complication. I wouldn't go into all the complications he has, but one of the most serious ones is he's got very low platelet counts, and basically that means if he gets a little cut, he's going to just bleed to death because his clotting factor is not functional. In his work, he actually needs to go back to India every 6 months, but we're not able to do that, so we're going to take him back every year for follow-up visits. In March of this year, as you saw in the news, there's going to be another group of children from Guyana who will be going, and so I'll talk a little bit about that. Before I do that, let's just quickly show you some figures here. And this is for the mission we just did in March of last year. That's the accommodation, the medical bill for Alvin Sukla, for Adrian Prasad and Bina Mangu. Now bear in mind the airfare is not included in that. And in addition to children we take to India, we also supply medicines for children in Guyana for their illnesses. And they cannot source the medicine in Guyana, so the foundation provides them with their medicines. So these are a couple of the Danita Dowlatram and Tanish Singh. We supply them with yearly medicines. We do have an office in Guyana. While here, everyone are volunteers. In Guyana, we do have a small office. And the salary for that person running the office is $6,000 a year. Rent is $100 US a month. Electricity and phone bill is about $1,200 a year. And like I said before, we have no expenses in Canada except for paper and ink for printer and that sort of thing. So in March of this year, that's actually next month, we are going to be taking 8 children. This is Malika Hercules, who had severe birth trauma. She has had her first series of surgery at the Hospital for Sick Children in Toronto, which was funded by the Herbie Fund. But I guess, like most of you know, the Herbie Fund only funds a one-time surgery and that's it. So subsequent surgery has to be done by someone else. So we did one surgery in 2017. She's going back for the final one this year, which is going to be a reconstruction of the orbital area and of the cranial part of her head. Marion Sheriff, she is 10 years old, and she's got a VSD. She's got a hole in her heart. They moved to live in Venezuela when things were hard in Guyana, and then of course, as we all know, things got hard in Venezuela. So the family moved back to Guyana. At the moment, she does have a Venezuelan passport, but that's expired. So her grandmother has gone to Venezuela this week to see if she can get a new passport for this child, because she really needs to get her heart fixed. If not, she can develop complications like pulmonary artery hypertension, and at which point it's going to become inoperable. So as it stands right now, we're waiting for the grandmother to come back from Venezuela with her passport, and then we will proceed with the necessary visa and so on. Evangeline Norman, she's got this really odd skin issue on her face, which in Guyana, as most of us know, she becomes someone to be ridiculed and to be scorned at. And they're not able to diagnose this in Guyana, so we've taken it upon ourselves that in order to get a proper diagnosis and treatment, we'll take her to India, so she's on the trip. Very smart child, but the ridicule and the disdain and the scorn she gets in Guyana is really unbearable. Devesh Chand, you heard her, his mom talked about him in that clip. He's got a brain tumor, so he's going to be undergoing diagnostic test and then proceed with the necessary surgery. Alvin Sokla, he's a child with nephrotic syndrome who I mentioned earlier. He's going back for follow-up. And Bina Mainru, who I also mentioned earlier. So in July of last year, this 14-year-old was actually sexually molested by her father. And in order for her to get a visa to come to Canada, or anyone under the age of 16, they have to have both parents sign the visa application form. So the father refused to sign the visa application form because he said this child must write a letter first stating that he did not rape her, and then he's going to sign the form. So we were not prepared to do that, even though it's been confirmed by a medical exam and there was a police report. He insists that he's not going to sign the visa application form. So we decided that we're going to take the aid of a lawyer in Guyana, and Jennifer Gobin, one of our board members, was able to have one of her relatives took the case up in Guyana. And that lawyer, Jaya, went to the court twice, and the court decided they're not going to give an order overriding the father's not getting the permission from the father. The reason why the police refused to give an affidavit, a sworn statement. The lawyer could not get a medical report from the hospital. The father was arrested in another jurisdiction. For the people who don't know Guyana, let's say the father was arrested in Toronto, the rape occurred in Kitchener. The police in Toronto let him out of jail because it was not in their jurisdiction. Now, it might sound really strange, and it is strange, to let a rapist go. So they let him go. He was incarcerated for 2 months for something unrelated to this issue, and he was let free. So, to make a long story short, I did not know what else to do. I sent a pleading letter to the Canadian High Commissioner in Trinidad, that's where the visas are being issued, and I said, I'm leaving this matter in your hands. I've tried everything within my power. I've taken a lawyer, she's gone to court a couple of times, I'm not able to get the permission from the father. You decide what's best for this child. So I thought I'll put the onus on them. And sure enough, 2 days after that letter got to them, they issued a visa for her. So she's able to come on the trip now in March. And here is Jessica Wan. Now she's not overweight, she's just full of fluid because her kidneys are not functioning properly. And thank God Rishi brought this child to our attention. She's actually a very, very sick child. She's actually got steroid-resistant nephrotic syndrome. And even though it's steroid-resistant, they continue to pump steroid in her in Guyana. So we need to get her out, get some tests done on her, try and get all that steroid out of her system, because we can do that in India with medications, and hopefully see where her kidney function is at and then treat her accordingly. And Adrian Prasad, I talked about him earlier, the child with the liver condition, and he's got a lot of comorbidities, like a lot of medical issues, including varicose veins in the esophagus. He's got rings on those. He's got pulmonary artery hypertension, and unfortunately he's the only child for that family, and his father died last year. So I think you saw him on that clip as well. But he's a very sick little boy. I don't know what we can do for him. I mean, the doctors in India say they would like to assess him every 6 months, but it's not feasible. We're not able to do that every 6 months. And this is the School for the Visually Impaired in Guyana, which Prakash made mention to. We have supplied the children with braille readers because they have, the school has big clunky, which is the big braille reader, which is not portable. And as most of you know, a braille reader is like a personal computer for the blind. So it's our intent, it's our, our hope that every child in the blind school, attending the School for the Visually Impaired, will eventually have their own personal braille reader. And when I was in Guyana last year, I came upon this newspaper. Now, a lot of people who go to Guyana, they come back and say, they had a great time. And my nephew back there, he's always coming back and telling me what a wonderful place it is. But it's really not a wonderful place at all. So, for those of you who disagree with me, I didn't make that up. I actually got it from the newspaper. I actually have the newspaper. And so, I'm sure most of you can read what it says. It says that 36% of people living in Guyana is surviving on $175 a day, and 19% are living in extreme poverty, surviving on an income of $1.25 a day. And this article was written because, for some of you who don't know, they have found oil in Guyana. They have found a lot of oil in Guyana. So the person who wrote this article was asking that some of the money, whenever they get that money, to be given to the poor and the widows. So I have the article here. If anyone wants to read it in full, please see me. I'll be happy to share it with you. But this is the reality in Guyana. If you're poor in Guyana, it's horrible. But if you're poor and sick in Guyana, it's a death sentence. You would hear stories about children going to the hospital and they're being chased. They're literally being, say, don't come back here, or your face makes me get upset, or whatever the case may be. But it's horrendous. I mean, I've seen it, I've heard it. I'm not making this up. And I'm sure those of you who have relatives in Guyana and who have to use the services of the government, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So, in reality, these children that we're taking, they really have no choice. Either we help them, or they just stay in Guyana and die and suffer. Eventually, I mean, we're all going to die, but they are going to suffer more than we are in the Western world until they die. They have no medicines. Guyana does not have a lot of specialists. There are no cardiac surgeons. There's no nephrologists. There's no gastroenterologist. So it lacks many, many medical facilities. People are still dying in childbirth in Guyana, something that you wouldn't hear in the Western world. And there is no way that you can question. Here, as a nurse, myself, if a patient complains about you, or if a patient complains about a doctor, if there's anyone, a doctor here, you know that you have to appear before your college. In Guyana, there's no such thing. The patients can be abused physically, verbally. Nobody really cares, especially if they're poor. If they're rich, and I'm sure there are a lot of rich people, they go to the States or they come to Canada for their care. But the poor people, they stay there and punished. So that's the reason you're here tonight, is to help those children who don't have a voice, to help those families who don't have a voice. And I'm appealing to you to help Ram and Prakash and Sateshwar and all the other people in the Kitchener area who put on this event every year to support them in whichever way you can. I'm sure you're all getting hungry. I'm not going to prolong this. If you have any questions, please see me at the end. And I'm sitting in the back. I'll be happy to talk to you. On April the 4th, we are having our Toronto event, and all those children you saw on the slide, they are going to be present at the event. So if you can come out to the Toronto event, please do so. We'll be happy to see you. And that's the end of my talk for tonight. I hope you enjoy the evening, and I've left you with a little bit of what Three Rivers Kids Foundation does and what we're all about. Thank you and have a wonderful evening.